Hi, this is my continuing series on the Colle opening. Basically, I found this website that had some example games, and unfortunately it's not in my chess engine, which is Fritz, so I can't make the arrows. I didn't find a way to download the PGN file, so I'm just going to record the website and go through the moves. I just want to cover a couple example games before I go back to maybe we call the lab and look at the Colle system and look at the various nuances. So in this video I just want to cover two similar type of openings for the Colle. Maybe I should say the Colle, also has its various lines and sub ideas, sort of like even the Sicilian. You see all the different types of variations. So in this video I just want to cover two. So let's get into it. And I also put over here that you can actually see these are highly rated opponents, definitely probably better than most of us watching. So these are just not beginners playing with the Colle system. So let's look at the game. And just want to note that the moves in the Colle are d4, e3, knight f3, bishop to d3, knight on b to d2, things like that. Just look for these moves in the Colle. So let's start. So d4, knight f6, very common. This can still transpose into a queen's gambit. Knight f3, same comment. E6, similar. We can still transpose in the different openings. And now e3. This is probably a mark of someone's going to be playing the Colle system. b6. Black plans on playing bishop to b7. Sort of a different idea that we haven't seen before. But we'll just move forward if you're a Colle player. Knight to d3. I'm sorry, bishop to d3. Bishop to b7. Knight on b to d2. So you can almost look like someone's just developing almost what the Colle ideas. Now, of course, we have to watch with this bishop on the diagonal that we don't want to move the knight, or they'll take the pawn over here. d5, blocking in the bishop over here, but also helping to secure, or black is trying to control this e4 square. Castles, bishop to e7, maybe better placed is d6. Rook to e1, obviously, like I said, white is trying to get in the break move of e4, will free its game. Black castles, queen to e2, putting more pressure along that diagonal. Also would help support, now the queen and bishop are along this line here. c5, and with c5 almost automatically, if you're a Colle player, comes c3. In case the move c4, you can just move the bishop back to c2. Knight on b to d7 by black. Now the break e4. D takes e4. Why? Because black can't let white get in the move e5, which would kick the knight somewhere else, and then white would, this good defender of the king's side, the knight has moved, and now white's pieces can just come over here and attack. So d takes e4, knight takes e4. Now c takes d4, and if you're white and black plays this move, always recaptures white with the knight, or you'll get an isolated pawn. c5, knight takes c5, b takes e5, getting an isolated pawn for black, but now the knight has to move. Now black has queen and bishop along this line here, so if the knight moves, it's mate. Developing the bishop, getting the rook to a central file. threatening to win the bishop. Rook, the rook on e to d1. Queen just steps back now because the nasty trick also of if the queen was back here, check, winning the queen. So h3, giving the bishop a square to come back to, preventing the knight from coming to here. a6, bishop to c4. I do want to cover a different game, so I'm just sort of running quickly through this. The bishop coming along a diagonal, which is attacking the king better. h6, bishop to h2, knight to h7, knight to e1. Watch out, the white has to watch out for the checkmate here. Obviously it's going to play f3, and then probably wants to then use the knight for somewhere else. Knight to g5, f3, bishop to d6, queen f2, b takes h2 check, king takes h2, rook to d6, black's obviously planning the double, poking at the knight, knight comes back, rook to d3, planning the double, and black doubles, white doubles, knight to f6, again the king to g1, and then they agreed to a draw. Too bad they didn't continue. But that was that game. So what can we learn from that game? Well, you got to see a classic Colle setup, and if I'd say also taking back with the knight on d4. So were the important lessons there. Let's move on to the next game. Okay, here's the next game between two 2500 rated opponents. So we have some very good players. So let's see how this game went. As you can tell, white did win. So let's take a look at this game quickly. d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6. Like I said before, this can still transpose into other openings. e3, c5. Don't panic yet. So the next thing is if you're a Colle player, if black plays this move c5, just play knight on b to d2, d5, c3. We can see our familiar Colle shape coming about. Knight on b to d7, bishop d3. When you look at all the Colle, the typical Colle moves, almost make them automatically. Bishop to d6, very common for black. Castles, castles, rook to e1, preparing the move e4, b6. Obviously black plans on putting the bishop here on b7. Now the move e4. Once again, I said black is going to feel compelled. Actually, it's threatening to now fork. From the previous game, the bishop was on e7. So now black has to take because of the fork. Knight takes, bishop to e7. Queen e2. So you can see some familiar moves if you're going to be playing white is bringing the queen to e2. C takes d4. What did I say like in the last game? If black plays this move, you recapture with the knight. Bishop to b7. g5. You could be telling yourself that some of the moves look familiar, and they somewhat are, but this is definitely different. Bishop to g5. Bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Knight takes e4. And then this little interesting, this now gets a little tactical, and so knight to c6 attacking queen, the queen. And now knight takes c3. So black now takes a pawn threatening the queen. This is where most people would probably start really calculating, but I've seen the sequence in a different couple of games, so someone's obviously figured it out, so it's good to know what to happen. So if black takes c3, then you play queen to c4, getting out of the way, threatening the knight, but also you're threatening still to take the queen. Rook to c8. Obviously now if you take the queen, it's just an exchange, but now the move, bishop takes e7, rook takes c6, queen takes c6, queen takes e7, queen takes c3. Here, let's back that up again and just take a look at it. Probably this is where most people lost it, or maybe not from there, but bishop takes, knight takes, knight to c6, knight takes c3, queen to c4, rook to c8, bishop takes, rook takes, queen takes rook, queen takes bishop, queen takes knight, and what's happened is that I want to say white won the exchange, but black also got a pawn out of it. So for white has a rook, and and black has a knight and a pawn. So how to proceed? Knight to f6. This is where we're starting to get into an endgame. Rook on a to d1, going to the open file. h6, creating some air for the king. White does likewise. Queen to b7, and I think I will probably, maybe I should just play quickly through the moves. White is now trying to use this pawn as a ram to help try to break up the king side, but doesn't want to use too many pawns or it could find itself in trouble. So you can tell the knight is hanging around the king for protection. Black threatens the pawn. This pawn's a goner. I know I'm quickly going through the moves. But this is where the mistake happens, is that obviously somewhere, let's see, where did it go? I'm sorry for backing up. Preventing the king from running this way. So now white's looking at a back row mate. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Now with this check, it's going to be mate if black takes, so it interposes with the knight, but then this rook just comes to here, double attacking. And black's in serious problems, so they resigned. That's it. I'll move on to the next video to show you some other games.